Hey there. Looks like we're taking a deep dive into modern capitalism today.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out, I guess, what's working, what's broken, where it's
hmm
all headed, right?
Yeah.
You sent over some really interesting stuff, including selections from Ruchir Sharma's The Rise and Fall of Nations.
Yeah.
We're talking about government spending, debt, the whole nine yards.
Right.
Plus, you even included some of his endnotes,
Yes.
which I always find fascinating.
I think they're really where the meat is sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes they are.
Yeah, the details are amazing.
You're really going for a 360-degree view here.
What's particularly interesting is how Sharma connects those like seemingly dry economic details
Yeah.
to the bigger picture of how capitalism is actually functioning,
Uh-huh.
or maybe malfunctioning
Right.
across different countries.
It's like you want to understand the mechanics of the system, but also see it in action
Yeah.
and maybe get a glimpse of what the future holds.
Exactly.
Well, let's dive in. One of the most striking arguments Sharma makes is that capitalism has developed a serious debt addiction.
It's not just about like personal credit card debt.
Right.
Sharma's talking about governments increasingly stepping in
Yeah.
to bail out companies,
Huh.
stimulate economies with easy money.
Mm.
And it creates this cycle where we keep reaching for debt as a solution,
Right.
but it might be creating even bigger problems down the line.
And he uses some really compelling examples.
Yeah,
The surge in government debt
sure.
after the 2008 financial crisis.
Of course.
And the COVID-19 pandemic is a prime example.
And-
It's like we've become so accustomed to using debt as a quick fix
Right.
that we've forgotten the potential consequences.
And those consequences, as Sharma lays out, can be pretty dire.
Yeah.
Runaway inflation,
Huh.
sluggish economic growth, and the rise of zombie companies
Oh, yeah.
kept alive by cheap credit, even though they're essentially insolvent.
Okay, so let's unpack that zombie company idea a bit more, because I remember highlighting that phrase in the source material.
Yeah,
It sounds spooky.
it does.
But why are they such a problem for the economy?
Well, imagine you're a small business owner
Okay.
trying to compete in a market where these zombie companies are lumbering around, undercutting prices because they don't have to worry about turning a real profit.
Right.
They distort competition, suck up resources that could go to healthier businesses,
Yeah.
and ultimately drag down the whole economy.
So it's not just that they're not contributing much.
Right.
They're actively making it harder for others to succeed.
Exactly.
That's a really important point.
And it's not just about the companies themselves.
Okay.
Sharma argues that this easy money environment,
Yeah.
fueled by government intervention,
Right.
can stifle innovation. When businesses can rely on cheap credit to survive,
Yeah.
they have less incentive to take risks, develop new products or processes.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
If you're constantly being bailed out, there's less pressure to adapt and evolve.
Exactly. And that leads us to another key point Sharma makes.
Oh, cool.
The productivity paradox.
Okay.
We've seen declining productivity growth in many developed economies.
Right.
Even with all the technological advancements of recent decades,
Yeah.
Sharma argues that this slowdown is directly linked to this debt addiction we've been discussing.
So it's not just that we're not producing as much as we could be.
Right.
It's that the easy money environment is hindering our ability to innovate and grow in a sustainable way.
That's right.
It's almost counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
You'd think with all the technology at our disposal,
Yeah.
we'd be more productive than ever.
That's where the paradox comes in.
Right.
There's this whole debate about whether technology is actually as transformative as we think it is.
Right.
Some economists argue that the impact of digital technology is less significant
Okay.
than earlier innovations like electricity
Uh-huh.
or the internal combustion engine.
So maybe we're overestimating the impact of our smartphones and social media
Maybe.
on actual economic output.
Could be.
That's interesting.
But Sharma goes beyond the technology debate.
Okay.
He argues that this productivity slowdown is deeply intertwined with increased government intervention in the economy.
Wait, so is he saying that the more the government tries to manage the economy?
It's a bit more nuanced than that.
Okay.
But he's definitely challenging the assumption that more government intervention automatically equals a better economy.
Okay.
And this is where his critique of the small government narrative comes in.
Right. He argues that despite all the rhetoric about shrinking the size of government,
Exactly.
government spending, regulation, overall intervention
Yep.
have actually been expanding for decades.
For decades.
I remember thinking, wait, is he really saying that the Reagan era
Yeah.
didn't actually shrink the size of government?
He does, yeah.
That seemed pretty bold.
It is, but he backs it up with some compelling evidence.
Yeah.
He points to the continued growth of social spending programs and the ever-expanding regulatory state.
And he even brings up the Brussels effect, which I had never heard of before.
Oh, interesting.
It's this idea that regulations from the European Union
Yeah,
end up influencing global markets,
right.
showing how government intervention can have a far-reaching impact.
A ripple effect.
Yeah, even beyond national borders.
Even if your country isn't directly subject to those regulations, if you want to do business on a global scale, you often have to comply anyway.
So whether we realize it or not,
Right.
we're all living in a world shaped by government intervention,
To some extent, yeah.
often in ways we don't even see.
It's true.
It's making me think about how these abstract economic policies discussed in Sharma's book
Uh-huh.
actually play out in people's everyday lives.
Exactly. And that brings us to another crucial point.
Okay.
The link between these trends
Yeah.
and rising inequality.
Okay.
Sharma argues that the easy money policies of central banks, which are often part of government intervention, right, have fueled the growing gap between the rich and everyone else.
So it's not just about economic growth or productivity.
It's about distribution.
Yeah, it's about how the benefits of that growth are distributed.
Exactly.
And Sharma is saying that the current system is rigged in favor of the wealthy.
He's arguing that these policies, while often intended to stimulate the economy, can have unintended consequences.
Oh, okay.
For example, they can inflate asset prices.
Okay.
Think stocks, real estate,
Right.
which disproportionately benefits those who already own those assets.
And we saw this play out in a really stark way during the pandemic.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the wealth of billionaires skyrocketed,
Yeah.
fueled in part by government bailouts and market interventions, while many ordinary people struggled to make ends meet.
A very potent example
Yeah.
of how these forces can exacerbate existing inequalities.
And it's not just about the accumulation of wealth at the top.
Yeah,
This trend has real consequences for
Like-
everyday affordability,
for sure.
particularly when it comes to housing.
Especially housing.
Housing prices have been soaring in many markets.
Driven in part by those low interest rates.
Yeah, making it increasingly difficult for people to afford a basic necessity like shelter.
It's a basic need.
It's creating a real sense of anxiety and frustration for many people.
It's a recipe for social unrest.
Yeah.
And it highlights how these seemingly abstract economic policies
Right.
can have profound social and political consequences.
So far, we've painted a pretty bleak picture of modern capitalism.
We have, haven't we?
Debt addiction, government overreach, a productivity paradox,
Uh-huh.
an inequality dilemma.
Yeah,
It's a lot to digest.
it is.
It's making me wonder if there's any hope
Yeah.
for a more sustainable and equitable form of capitalism.
Good question.
Does Sharma offer any solutions?
He does.
Or is it all doom and gloom?
He does offer solutions, and he also highlights some bright spots.
Okay.
Some examples where capitalist principles are still yielding positive results.
Okay, that's good to hear.
It's not all doom and gloom.
I'm definitely ready for some optimism after all that.
Well, let's delve into those bright spots
Okay.
and explore Sharma's solutions in part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. I'm ready to see how we can turn this ship around.
Let's do it.
Huh?
So, one thing that really stood out to me from Sharma's book
Yeah.
was his discussion of this illusion of small government.
Uh-huh.
He argues that despite all the talk about shrinking government, intervention has actually been expanding for decades.
It's like that saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Right.
We might talk about limited government, but the reality seems quite different.
Exactly. And Sharma uses some compelling evidence to back this up.
Okay.
For example, he highlights how government spending as a share of GDP has been steadily increasing in most developed countries since the 1970s. And it's not just about spending either.
Right.
He points to the growth of the regulatory state, with increasingly complex rules governing every aspect of our lives.
It's like we're being slowly entangled in a web of bureaucracy.
Yeah, it can feel that way sometimes.
And it's not just a national phenomenon, right?
No, not at all.
Sharma brings up the Brussels effect,
Yes.
how regulations from the European Union end up influencing global markets.
A great example of how government intervention can have a ripple effect, extending far beyond national borders.
Right.
Companies around the world often have to comply with EU regulations if they want to participate in the global market.
So even if your country isn't directly subject to those regulations, you're still impacted.
Precisely. It makes you realize how interconnected everything is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this trend toward greater government intervention as Sharma sees it,
Mm-hmm.
is a key factor driving those problems we discussed earlier.
Okay.
The debt addiction, the productivity paradox, the inequality dilemma.
They're all linked.
They're all interconnected.
It's like a domino effect. One problem leads to another.
Exactly.
And the whole system becomes unstable.
It can, yeah.
But why does Sharma see government intervention as such a problem?
Well, that's a good question.
Isn't there a role for government in regulating markets,
Sure.
providing public goods, ensuring a safety net for those in need?
Of course there's a role for government.
Yeah.
Sharma acknowledges that.
Right.
But he argues that when government intervention becomes excessive, it can stifle innovation, distort markets,
Yeah.
and ultimately harm the very people it's intended to help.
Yeah.
He's particularly critical of the culture of bailouts, where governments repeatedly step in to rescue failing companies or industries.
It's like giving someone a crutch when they just need a bandage.
That's a good analogy.
Sure, it might provide temporary support,
Yeah.
but it can also create dependency and prevent them from fully recovering.
Exactly. And Sharma points out that these bailouts often benefit the wealthy and well-connected
Right.
at the expense of ordinary taxpayers.
It creates a system where success is determined not by hard work and innovation,
Right.
but by political connections.
That's the worry, isn't it?
That's concerning.
Yeah.
But if we're going to move away from this culture of bailouts and excessive intervention,
Yeah.
what's the alternative?
That's the big question.
What should the government's role be in a healthy capitalist system?
Well, according to Sharma,
Yeah.
the government should focus on creating a level playing field for businesses,
Okay.
ensuring fair competition, enforcing contracts, protecting property rights, providing essential public goods like infrastructure and education.
So setting the rules of the game
Yes.
and making sure everyone plays by them.
Exactly.
It's about creating an environment where businesses can thrive based on their own merit,
Right.
not government handouts.
Exactly. Sharma argues that when the government focuses on these core functions, it lays the groundwork for sustainable economic growth and widespread prosperity.
Okay.
Innovation and entrepreneurship can flourish, benefiting society as a whole.
It sounds good in theory,
It does.
but is it realistic?
Well, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? He's not advocating for a complete absence of government.
Right.
He recognizes the vital role it plays,
Uh-huh.
but believes that role should be limited and focused.
It's about finding the sweet spot where government intervention supports
Yeah.
and complements market forces without stifling them.
Finding that balance is a challenge, of course.
Yeah, it sounds like a delicate balancing act.
It is. It requires careful consideration, prudent policymaking,
Right.
and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances.
An ongoing process.
It is. It's not a one-time fix.
It's like riding a bicycle.
I like that.
You need to constantly adjust your balance to stay upright.
You do.
And when it comes to government intervention, finding that balance can be even trickier.
That's where Sharma's analysis is so helpful, I think.
Okay.
It encourages us to think critically about the role of government,
Yeah.
to question our assumptions,
Mm-hmm.
and to consider the long-term consequences of our policy choices.
It's about being mindful, deliberate, and responsible
Exactly.
in our approach to governing.
And recognizing that there are no easy answers, no magic bullets,
Right.
no one-size-fits-all solution.
Every situation is unique,
It is.
and every policy decision involves trade-offs.
There are always trade-offs.
The key is to be aware of those trade-offs.
Yes.
Weigh the costs and benefits.
Right.
And make decisions based on sound evidence and thoughtful analysis.
It's about being pragmatic, not ideological, putting the long-term interests of society
Yeah.
ahead of short-term political gains.
And that message resonates across the political spectrum, doesn't it?
I think so.
Whether you lean left or right, there's a growing awareness that the status quo isn't working.
I think there is.
We need to find a better way forward,
I do.
a more balanced approach to government and markets,
I agree.
if we want to create a future that is both prosperous and just.
Absolutely. We're all in this together,
Yeah.
and we need to work together to find solutions that benefit everyone.
Speaking of solutions, Sharma does offer some specific recommendations, doesn't he?
He does. He suggests a range of policies aimed at promoting sustainable growth,
Right.
reducing debt, and addressing inequality.
Okay, so hit me with some highlights.
Well, he advocates for things like fiscal responsibility, tax reform, deregulation, and investments in education and infrastructure.
So a multi-pronged approach.
Yes, very much so.
Creating conditions for businesses to thrive, empowering individuals to succeed,
Right.
and ensuring that the benefits of economic growth are shared more broadly.
Exactly. It's not just about growing the pie.
Right.
It's about making sure everyone gets a slice.
I like that.
And while some of his recommendations might be controversial,
Right.
they're all rooted in a deep understanding of how markets work and a genuine concern for the well-being of society.
So he's not just an ivory tower academic. He's actually trying to grapple with real-world problems.
That's right. He's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom or propose bold solutions, even if they're unpopular with certain groups.
It's about putting principles over politics, doing what's right, even when it's difficult.
Exactly.
And I think that's what makes Sharma's book so compelling.
I agree.
It's a call to action,
It is.
a challenge to rethink our assumptions,
Right.
and a roadmap for a more sustainable and equitable future.
I think that's a great way to put it.
But it's not just about policy, is it?
No.
It's also about a shift in mindset,
Absolutely.
a change in how we think about government, markets, and our role in society.
Sharma argues that we need to move away from the entitlement mentality.
Okay.
That's become so prevalent in many developed countries.
So more self-reliance, less dependency on government handouts.
He believes we need to rediscover the values of hard work, self-reliance, and personal responsibility.
It's about taking ownership of our lives, our communities, and our future.
Exactly. Recognizing that government can't solve all our problems, and that we need to be active participants in shaping our own destinies.
It's about recognizing that we're not just consumers or taxpayers,
No.
but citizens with a responsibility to participate in the political process, engage in civil discourse, and demand better from our leaders.
He envisions a more engaged and empowered citizenry.
I like that.
He believes individuals need to be more informed, more involved, and more willing to hold their leaders accountable.
It's a tall order, but I think it's essential for a healthy democracy.
I agree.
And a thriving capitalist system.
Absolutely. But it's not just about demanding things from our leaders, is it?
No, you're right. It's also about taking responsibility for our own actions,
Yes.
our communities, and our contribution to society.
Sharma emphasizes the importance of social capital, the networks of trust and cooperation that bind communities together.
So it's about more than just individual responsibility.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness.
Exactly.
And building strong communities.
He argues that strong social capital is essential for a healthy society and a vibrant economy.
Something that's been lacking in many societies lately, wouldn't you say?
I think so. We've become increasingly polarized, divided, and distrustful of each other.
It does feel like we've lost the ability to have constructive conversations.
I agree.
With people who disagree with us.
We retreat into our echo chambers.
Yeah.
Reinforce our own biases, and demonize those who hold different views.
And Sharma sees this trend as a threat to both democracy and capitalism.
He does. He argues that this polarization undermines the trust and cooperation that are essential for a functioning society and a thriving economy.
So how do we reverse this trend?
Well, he suggests we need to find ways to bridge the divides.
Okay.
Engage in respectful dialogue and find common ground despite our differences.
It's about recognizing that we have more in common than what divides us.
Exactly.
Focusing on the things that unite us.
Right.
Our shared humanity, our desire for a better future, our belief in the power of human potential.
A message that's especially important in today's world.
Yeah.
Where we face challenges that demand collective action.
Absolutely. Climate change, global pandemics, economic inequality.
Those are just a few.
These are problems that can't be solved by any single country or group.
They require global cooperation, shared sacrifice, and a willingness to put the common good ahead of narrow self-interest.
It's a tall order, but one worth striving for.
I think so.
It sounds like Sharma is advocating for a more holistic and interconnected view of the world.
He is. He wants us to recognize that we're all part of a larger ecosystem. Our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for others and for future generations.
It's about leaving the world a better place than we found it.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another key theme in Sharma's book, the importance of sustainability.
Absolutely. Sharma argues that we need to move away from the short-term, profit-driven mindset that has dominated capitalism for too long.
It's about recognizing that the economy is not an end in itself, but a means to an end.
Exactly.
A tool for creating a better life for ourselves and for future generations.
He believes we need to incorporate environmental and social considerations into our economic decision-making.
It sounds like he's advocating for a more conscious form of capitalism.
He is. He's not anti-growth or anti-capitalism.
Okay.
He believes markets can be a powerful force for good, but they need to be guided by values that prioritize sustainability, fairness, and the well-being of all.
Creating an economy that works for everyone, not just the select few.
Exactly.
Ensuring that economic growth doesn't come at the expense of the environment or social justice.
That's the goal.
Building a future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
A future worth fighting for.
Absolutely. And I think Sharma's book gives us a lot to think about and act upon.
I agree.
It's a timely and thought-provoking analysis
that
challenges us to reimagine capitalism for the 21st century.
I think it's a book that deserves to be read, discussed, and debated widely.
Ready to continue our global tour and see how these ideas are playing out in the real world.
Definitely. Let's see what lessons we can learn from the successes and failures of different countries in navigating the complexities of modern capitalism. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and explore some specific examples from Sharma's book. He takes us on this global tour, right, to see how various countries are tackling the challenges of modern capitalism.
Yeah, it's like a real-world case study, seeing those abstract concepts play out in different contexts.
Exactly.
With different cultures, different political systems, different levels of economic development.
Exactly.
Makes it a lot more tangible.
And one intriguing example he discusses is Switzerland.
Switzerland, really?
Yeah.
I always think of them for chocolate and mountains, not necessarily cutting-edge economic models.
Right. They often get overlooked in these conversations.
Yeah.
But it's a fascinating case study
Okay.
in maintaining a strong, stable economy with relatively low levels of government intervention.
It's like the quiet achiever of the capitalist world.
Kind of, yeah. Consistently delivering high living standards, low unemployment, fiscal prudence.
Do they do well?
What's their secret sauce?
Well, one key ingredient is their strong tradition of fiscal responsibility.
Okay.
The Swiss government has consistently maintained balanced budgets and low levels of public debt.
So, they're not big spenders.
Not really, no.
This fiscal prudence has created a stable environment conducive to long-term growth.
It's like having a solid financial foundation, right?
Yeah.
You're not constantly struggling to stay afloat.
Right, so you can focus on building something lasting.
Exactly. And this fiscal responsibility is also reflected in their approach to social welfare programs.
Okay, so it's not just about austerity.
No, not at all.
They actually have a well-developed safety net.
They do.
But it's designed to encourage self-reliance and avoid creating dependency.
Right. It provides support for those who need it.
Yeah.
But also incentivizes work and personal responsibility.
It's that balance again.
There it is.
Providing support, but encouraging individual initiative. Finding that sweet spot.
Creating a system that's both compassionate and sustainable.
Exactly.
But Switzerland's success isn't just about fiscal prudence and social welfare, is it?
No, it's not.
It's also about their business environment.
Absolutely. Switzerland has a highly competitive and innovative business environment.
They do.
It's home to some of the world's leading companies.
Oh, yeah?
In industries like pharmaceuticals, finance, precision engineering.
It makes you wonder what they're doing differently.
Well, part of their success stems from their commitment to free markets, low taxes, and light regulation.
So they're not afraid to let the market do its thing.
They create an environment where businesses can thrive. Entrepreneurship is rewarded, and innovation is encouraged.
It's about letting the market do its thing, but providing the necessary infrastructure and support to ensure a level playing field.
Exactly.
And Switzerland's success demonstrates that you don't need a big intrusive government to achieve economic prosperity.
It's not about the size of government.
Yeah.
It's about how that government functions.
Less is more, sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
Switzerland isn't the only example Sharma highlights, though.
No, it's not.
He also talks about Taiwan.
Taiwan, yes.
Another country that's achieved remarkable economic success.
They have.
With a relatively hands-off approach from the government.
Taiwan is a fascinating case.
Yeah. I don't know much about their economy.
It's a small island nation that's faced numerous challenges, including political instability and threats from its larger neighbor, China.
Right.
Yet it's become a global leader in technology and manufacturing.
So it's like a David and Goliath story?
Kind of, yeah.
A small country punching above its weight on the global stage?
Exactly.
How do they pull that off?
Well, one key factor is their focus on education and human capital.
Okay.
They've invested heavily in their education system, creating a highly skilled and adaptable workforce.
Investing in your people, reaping the rewards for generations to come.
Right, and it's about more than just technical skills.
Okay, what else?
It's about fostering a culture of creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving.
Giving people the tools to think for themselves.
Exactly.
Not just follow instructions.
Equipping people with the tools they need to thrive in a rapidly changing global economy.
It's a smart strategy, and it seems to be paying off for them.
It is. They've been very successful.
Their story offers valuable lessons for other countries.
Absolutely.
Especially those struggling to achieve sustainable growth.
It's a reminder that economic success isn't about size or natural resources.
Right.
It's about having the right policies, the right mindset, and the right people.
Creating an environment that fosters innovation, rewards hard work, encourages entrepreneurship.
And recognizing that government plays a supporting role, not a leading one.
Exactly. Creating the conditions for success, not trying to micromanage every detail of the economy.
Right.
And I think that's a key takeaway from Sharma's analysis of these successful examples.
What is that?
It's not about choosing between big government and free markets. It's about finding the right balance.
That sweet spot.
Yeah, the sweet spot where government intervention supports market forces without stifling innovation and entrepreneurship.
It's a delicate balance.
It is, but there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Not at all. What works in one country might not work in another.
Makes sense.
The key is to be adaptable.
Yeah.
Learn from the experiences of others and tailor your policies to your specific circumstances.
Being pragmatic, not dogmatic. Focusing on what works, not on ideological purity.
I think that's crucial in today's world.
Yeah.
Where we face so many complex and interconnected challenges.
Absolutely.
We need to be open to new ideas.
Yeah.
Willing to experiment and always learning from our mistakes.
Recognizing that the world is constantly changing and we need to adapt if we want to thrive.
Adaptation is key.
We need to constantly innovate, constantly improve, and constantly strive for a better future.
That's the beauty of capitalism, isn't it?
What is?
It's a system that's constantly evolving, constantly adapting, constantly pushing boundaries.
Yeah, I guess it is.
It's far from perfect.
It's definitely not perfect.
But it's also the most powerful engine for progress and prosperity that humanity has ever created.
It's hard to argue with that.
And as we've seen in this deep dive, the key to harnessing that power is to find the right balance.
That sweet spot.
The sweet spot where individual initiative and collective responsibility, market forces, and government intervention all work together to create a future that is both prosperous and just.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our deep dive into modern capitalism.
It does.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground, explored the challenges, the opportunities, and the potential solutions.
But the conversation doesn't end here.
No,
This is just the beginning.
Exactly.
I encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, challenge your assumptions, and engage in meaningful dialogue about the future of capitalism.
Because ultimately, the future is not something that happens to us.
Right.
It's something we create together.
So get out there, get involved, and start shaping the future you want to see.
Absolutely.
For more deep dives into fascinating topics, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Pages and Perspectives.
That's right.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
We appreciate you listening.
Thank you for joining us.